Thousands of men across North Carolina are getting kicked out of their homes for spending their children's college fund because of legalized online gambling. We are still here discussing zombies. Oh yeah, I wanted to dedicate this one to Adam, a good friend of mine, and Steve's, who passed away. We used to spend a lot of time getting drunk and talking about what we would do if zombies took over. So I wanted to throw that out there as well.
That's right. Love you,
Love you,
Adam.
Adam. Indeed. So, getting started, zombies is one of my favorite topics. It was probably one of my absolute favorite genres of horror, and probably one of the ones I was into the youngest. And I've got a couple of guys here in particular that I want to talk about who I just think are like the masters of zombies here. And of course, the first one, if anybody's ever seen zombie movies, knows that Romero pretty much invented the movie Zombie. And he started that off with Night of the Living Dead. So if you guys don't have anything to add, I was going to go ahead and start off with Night of the Living Dead today.
The year was
It was
1968.
1968, in fact. And there's some really interesting facts and information about this. But the original was in black and white, and the makeup and effects were, as you'd expect in 1968. I mean, I think they were a little lacking, but it's understandable. But I do think the black and white helped the effects. Having a
Hmm.
lot of the darkness, you really couldn't see how bad the makeup was at parts. But I mean, it was a great movie, and I want everybody to understand before we really get going here that I love zombie movies, and I absolutely love Romero. And any critiques that I have about that is just me playing devil's advocate and just kind of things that I've thought about. I'm not knocking these movies. I actually love all of these movies we're about to discuss. So before anybody like blows up and calls me fucking anti-zombie or something, I don't know. So it was a solid movie, and it really became the cornerstone of zombie culture. I think diehard fans have a hard time accepting the remake for this reason, I believe. People are always mad at the remakes because they get really into that cult classic, kind of thing where they really can't stand anybody else doing anything that's been done if they love it. And I get it. But the remake follows the storyline closely. It was in color, of course. The remake was directed by Tom Savini, which everybody should know Tom Savini. He's a big he's really big in horror, mostly makeup artist, but he's also been in a lot of movies. The first one that comes to mind is From Dusk Till Dawn, but many other
Yeah.
movies as well. And the remake featured Tony Todd, and we all know that I'm a huge Tony Todd fan, so that's very exciting, and I like that a lot. The remake was much gorier. A lot of that probably had to do with the fact that Tom Savini was doing the makeup, and he's a horror makeup guy. So, if you got a horror makeup guy directing a horror movie, chances are it's going to be a little bit gorier. The original film ends in an interesting way, with the local militia taking care of the zombies in a pretty relaxed way. Despite the chaos of the entire movie, up until that point, the situation seems to be under control. The remake takes this idea even further. For a very interesting finale, we see the eradication of the zombies has turned into some sort of blue collar pastime. The militia is hanging zombies from trees, using them for target practice, and forcing them to fight each other while drinking beer. It prompts the line from Barbara, "They're us, we're them, and they're us." Um, yeah, that was pretty interesting. I always wondered. That was one of the questions I had. Is you don't really see zombies fighting each other. Like you never see them like all like going in a swarm, and then like one dude steps on another dude's toes, or I don't know, fucking. They're never fighting over like humans and shit like that. I thought that was kind of interesting though. But they had them fighting in the end. I know that Jen watched the original Night of the Living Dead to prepare for this show. Jen, what did you have to say about that?
Well, I don't have a whole lot of notes, but I mean, I think it's a wonderful classic zombie movie. Um, you mentioned like the makeup effects weren't, maybe so good, but the black and white helped. I definitely agree with that. I really liked the lighting.
Yeah,
I liked like the shadows and the lighting and like the camera angles were really well done. So I was very impressed by that. I hadn't seen it in years, so I rewatched it
absolutely.
recently.
I think that was a
Um,
masterpiece work with using the shadows to the
yeah,
advantage. I agree with that completely.
definitely. And
Yeah,
it's probably one of the things I liked most.
it said that Romero uses within a lot of his zombie movies kind of the opportunity to reflect society within his movies.
Yeah.
So, in part, the potentially why zombies don't go after each other, because they're always going after the living, not the living dead. So,
Right.
but yes, I have not seen that movie. I believe I've seen it, but I have not seen it in a long, long time. There's a handful of his movies that I watched way back when, but I have not watched it as of late. I do believe it takes place in a barn, if I recall. Is
Well, it
that right?
starts off at the
It's a
graveyard, and then
house.
they end up going to kind of a.
Yeah.
It's like an old farmhouse.
It's a house. Farmhouse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Farmhouse. Okay. Yeah, I've got a vague remembrance of it,
I mean
but
it was a brilliant movie.
I do know that was.
Sorry.
Mhm.
No, I said I do know that kind of started
Oh
it
yeah,
off. And it's also where he and a gentleman named Russo kind of split ways too. And I don't know if you know that story, but
And
they
John
worked
Russo.
together. Yeah, they worked together, and for whatever reason, the fact that the movie was called Night of the Living Dead and the term or the word night was in it gave Russo the ability to be able to continue on with the same kind of setup and same genre, um, without any copyright infringement or anything like that. So he kind of took off in his direction and Romero went in his.
and here we are talking about
Oh.
Romero, so we all know who won that little battle.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I do know what you're talking about in those movies. Probably will be another day and another episode, but they're not nearly this as good as Romero's work, in my opinion. Jen, did you have anything? Oh, Steve, I was going to answer that. I understand. See, that's the thing I was thinking about with the why, because zombies are like basically kind of dumb aggression, really, and that's why I always wondered why they never really fought over things or with each other, is because even though they are after human flesh, it's almost like they not necessarily work together, but it's almost like it's like first comes first serve, and they accept that or something. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting, like why one zombie wouldn't be, like a dog, like attacking another zombie over like a
Hmm.
human or something. But that was just a thought I
Right.
had.
Yeah, I talked to Jen earlier about that. Virtually every zombie movie I've ever seen uh, was a zombie going after a living person without
Mhm.
really thinking of anything or having the ability cognitively to be able to make decisions or choices or do anything on their own with their own uh, mind. It's just kind of a brainless attack. And
Mhm.
until I saw one movie, which we can talk about later, that is definitely broke um, that pattern throughout most zombie movies
Now, when
I've
you
ever
talk
seen.
about that and you say it that way, it makes me feel like these movies are almost maybe a metaphor for how thirsty men are today. Just kind of attacking
Yeah.
brainlessly and without thinking. I don't know. You said society earlier. I just thought that was kind of a
Yeah.
funny interlude there. The humans are the women, and yeah. Anyway, dating out there is bad right now, from what I can tell. um, Jen, did you have anything else to add about Night of the Living Dead, or should we move on to Dawn of the Dead?
I mean, I was just gonna say that there's a couple of themes in Night of the Living Dead. Racism
Yeah,
is one of them.
absolutely.
And closed-mindedness. And I didn't really like do a lot of research on this movie, but I did think it was interesting that that one guy in it, he kept wanting to go into the cellar. I mean, like he would not stop talking about like I want to go into the cellar. Kept wanting to go into the cellar. And then the main guy, he wants to keep
Yeah,
fighting them. So it's I don't know. It's kind of like I'm sure there's like a theme in there somewhere, like maybe uh, the desire for survival versus kind of just hoarding yourself away and not dealing with the problem, like something like that. I'm sure there's some sort of
yeah,
theme like
I
that.
definitely could see that, facing the problem head on and kind of hiding. I mean, in that kind of
Yeah.
situation, I mean, you might as well keep fighting. Because no matter if you keep fighting, no matter what, no matter where you end up, you're going to end up in a hole somewhere by yourself, probably without anything.
Mm.
And I'd rather I'd rather fight my way out and die that way than die of starvation in a fucking hole. So, I mean, me personally,
Yeah.
that's how I feel. But yeah, I don't know. Very interesting. So, Dawn of the Dead, it is.
Sure.
Ten years
Dawn of the
later.
Dead, 10 years later. Steve's stealing my lines. Um, so we're gonna do kind of an original versus remake again because once again, this was also a remade film. This one was actually initially named Zombie. I don't know if you guys knew that, but was later changed to Dawn of the Dead to avoid confusion with other zombie movies of the time. Now, this is interesting, and I know Jenna's going to like this. Dario Argento helped Romero get the funding for Dawn of the Dead. In return, Argento was
Yeah.
allowed to edit and redistribute the film. The original had an optimistic ending where the main protagonists get away in a helicopter. The original started out with a zombie
Mm.
outbreak already being well established. Two SWAT team members being acted like they'd being killed, acted like they were killing zombies per week. I don't know. My notes are fucked up there. Months or even years. Zombies were the only topic on the news, and people were already publicly investigating why the outbreak was occurring. In the remake, it starts out with nobody knowing anything about the zombies, the characters waking up in the morning to the zombie apocalypse. The characters, a group of people held up in the mall, were drastically different than the ones in the original. In the original, it was two SWAT team members, a traffic reporter, and TV executive. In the remake, it was a nurse, policeman, married couple, salesman, and a few mall security guards. The plot was different. In the original, it was a group of people who decided to hold up in an abandoned mall after running away in a helicopter. In the remake, it was a group of survivors of the initial outbreak who happened to end up in the mall while running from the zombies. In the original, the group encountered a gang of bikers who raid the mall. Never happens in the remake. In the remake, the group is trying to escape from the mall and modify two buses to try to escape. In the original, the group are trying to stay in the mall. Zack Snyder directed the remake. The end of the remake was much more open ended, giving us a good taste that things went horribly wrong without actually showing us what happened to the survivors. And I always thought that was like it. I don't know. In the end of the remake, which is the remake of Dawn of the Dead, is probably one of my favorite Romero. Well, it's not Romero. It was Snack Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder's interpretation, but it is probably one of my favorite remakes of like all time. I think that movie was very well done, even though a lot of people would disagree with me. Um, but I thought it was really good. I thought like the acting was good. I thought the filming was good. Everything was good about it. And the end was really interesting because if you guys remember the end of that one, it kind of like they got away, but then they had like little clips and snips that like it didn't work out,
Yeah.
but you don't really see what
It
happens.
was like found
Yeah,
footage, almost like found
yeah,
footage
they
at the
had
end
that recorder
credits.
that the guy was using to record himself like fucking the
Hmm.
model or whatever in the mall, and they had his camera,
Mhm.
and then they were you know filming things at the end there. Um,
Mhm.
Preparing for diary
yeah,
later on.
pretty much. The I actually thought one of the best characters in that was actually like the shitty security security because the guy was such a dick in the beginning, but he really redeemed himself at the end, and I actually like that about his character a lot. So kind of put him down as a notable
Yeah.
character because I really feel like at the end he was probably one of the better ones. You know, he really turned full circle there. But I know Jen, you had mentioned that you had seen these, so what do you have to add?
Let's start with the
Let's
original,
do it.
I guess. So there's definitely more racism and military involvement in this one compared to the remake. Um, I only watched the first half of this one. I'm sorry I didn't get to
Okay.
finish it. Um, but I did see the beginning. I saw at least the first half. And I do know from my research of it that there's even more focus on consumerism and obtaining like material possessions in this one. Um, but I didn't get to see that part because I only got to saw the beginning. So anyway, I kind of got to see like the sort of boring parts. I think it's a little bit boring at the beginning. Although there was a kill scene that I thought was pretty cool. The helicopter when it chops off like the top of the
Oh,
guy's
yep,
head.
yep. That was good.
That was kind of cool.
Nobody.
I always wondered why
um,
people would duck under helicopters when they.
yeah.
Maybe that might
It'll
be
take
why.
off the top.
It's
Yeah,
kind of the
for sure.
beginning. It's the beginning of military involvement in the movies that came after too from him as well. I think that was kind of like the turning point of that style, wasn't it?
Well, the Crazies also had a lot of military involvement. I don't remember what year
Right.
that was.
73, if I remember.
Look at this guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm guessing. I'm good with
right
numbers,
on
but
right on
it
top of
might be
that.
right.
Well, the Crazies might have been the first then. I don't know because that one had military involvement for sure.
Hmm.
But the
But
crazies that, but I think
I
that, and
did.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
Oh,
I think that because I watched them kind of in a row, and I do think that he set it up so that
hmm
the movies, even though they may not be connected necessarily, except for a couple that we're going to get to, I do feel like he lined them up in such a way that I don't think the crazies was a part of the same universe, or was it?
yeah.
Because I didn't think it was.
It might. It probably
Okay, I was
wasn't. I don't
confused.
know.
I don't
Okay,
believe so.
I got you.
Um,
Continue on, Jen.
Doesn't it? Doesn't it have to have like the word dead in it to be considered part of that
I
universe?
don't know.
Probably.
Hmm.
Yeah.
well,
That's
I
just
read
my assumption.
something that it was like the order of operations within that was what: Night of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead, Diary, and then I think they might have done something after the fact, but it's where it shut down. But those were the cogs in that
After
machine.
Diary was Survival.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Survival.
Oh,
and I'll get into that as well.
there's a lot of them
Yeah,
I haven't
there's
seen.
some good ones, and actually, I got so excited because I was rewatching all these, and like they kind of, I mean, like yeah, of course the original like Night of the Living Dead is classic and it's amazing, but honestly, I was getting kind of excited because they were kind of getting better. Like everyone I watched, like I was kind of like really getting into it.
Mm.
It was very fun rewatching all the movies for the show. I cut you off again, Jen.
Oh,
Please
should I
continue.
continue? Yeah. I get cut off a
I'm
lot. You guys are
sorry.
mean.
We're bulldogs, man. I don't know. I'm a dick.
Sexism. Okay. Anyway. um, I've lost my
Uh oh.
place. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
I just had a couple of I just had a couple of fun facts. So Romero considers this movie, as in the Dawn of the Dead original, to be his favorite.
Oh,
I thought that was
okay.
interesting. Um, and it inspired the video game Dead Rising. And Tom Savini has a cameo. He's one of the motorcycle riders.
He's littered in horror
Yeah.
movies. He's like everywhere, really. Especially if you start
Yeah.
watching like '80s
Yeah.
horror movies and stuff. He's everywhere.
Uh huh. Yeah, I've seen him in quite a few, and I'm always like,
Yeah,
I know
that's
that
that
guy. That's
guy.
Tom Savini.
Um,
Yeah.
it's not my favorite. That's interesting that it's his favorite, but I'm sure he has reasons.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get to finish that one in its entirety, but from what I saw, it's not really my favorite either. Oh, and they have blue faces. It's so blue. The
Yeah,
zombies
yeah.
are so
Yeah,
blue.
that's right. Yeah, and again, I didn't watch the whole movie either, but I've seen parts of it in the past, and I remember them being blue as well.
Blue.
Do
Very
you
blue.
remember what was the reasoning behind that?
I do know a little bit. I read a little bit about Tom Savini and how he like, for the Night of the Living Dead, he was so used to like the black and white that he didn't really take that into an account for it being like so blue. He didn't mean for it to be so blue. So I mean, he admitted fault, I guess.
And I mean, people love it. It
Took
was Romero's
accountability.
favorite, so
Yeah.
I never, I,
Well, it's probably his favorite
I
for the
never knew about
story.
him and Dario
I've seen
Argento
it.
either. I thought you'd think that was pretty interesting because I know that's one of your favorites. He
Yeah.
actually, to continue on that a little bit, I did read that Argento did actually produce that movie, like in Italy and some other countries. I think he actually cut it a little bit shorter, and it actually was pretty popular before it even premiered in the United States, from what I understand.
Oh, did he cut it from the end or did he
It
cut some
just
of the
said that it was
beginning?
actually shorter than Romero's version, so I'm not really sure what he
Oh,
did. I mean, I'd love to see it one day to see what the differences are.
for sure. I'd love to see that as well.
You just want to see it because Argento touched it,
Yeah.
pretty much.
I'm always curious about the stuff he's done, and I've seen quite a bit of it.
Well, apparently they were buddies, so
Um, yeah, I think that's really
another
cool.
reason to like Romero, because Romero was like broke back then, I guess, and Argento was a lot more established at the time, I guess. So he was
Yeah.
able to help out. What else you got?
Um, well, we can talk
Talk
about the
about the
remake.
remake. That's one of my favorite remakes.
Yeah. I enjoyed it as well. It's basically a small group of people go inside a mall to escape from a zombie horde. The themes are consumerism and how humanity responds in a crisis. And it reminded me of a video game a little bit. Um, and it is less military involvement in the remake, like a lot less. Like you only see maybe a little bit like on the TV or something. Oh, and then that helicopter goes by and just like completely
Yeah,
disregards them because they're up on the roof. And like that's pretty much it. Like so different from the original, where it's like very heavily like military at the very beginning. I do know that because
yeah.
I saw the beginning. Um, and they don't know very much about the virus except for what they learn as they go.
What did they call them in that
Um,
one? Like Twitchers?
that one
Sorry.
nurse,
Yeah, no, what was
Twitchers.
it the security guards were calling them in that movie? Wasn't it like their Twitchers or something like that? Or something?
Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
catch
like each
that,
each
but I
movie they
like
kind
that.
of use like a different term for
Yeah.
them, which I like because then it makes it seem like it's happening in different places and people don't know. So,
Mhm.
but yeah,
Oh yeah, that reminds me. In Night of the Living Dead, they didn't call them zombies like at all. They did not call them zombies. They called them ghouls.
ghouls. Okay,
Yeah, in that
all
old
right, all
version.
right.
Yeah. I did think that was interesting. I forgot to write it in my notes. But I will say this: I really love that they named the coffee shop Hallowed Ground. Like I really got a kick out of that when I
That's
saw
cute.
that.
That is cute.
Hallowed Ground. It's like a cemetery type name, but
But
like
coffee.
coffee related. I think that
It's
it's
like
like
dead,
perfect.
but like coffee. Yeah.
Yeah. And Tom Savini also has a cameo as the
Yep.
sheriff, which I believe you see him on
Yeah.
the
Yep.
TV or towards the beginning or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's on the TV. I remember that part. And also, if we're mentioning
Yeah.
actors, I got to give a shout out to Ving Rhames because he's fucking awesome too. So, fucking love Ving
Yeah.
Rhames.
I think all the acting really was pretty good in
Yeah,
this
it wasn't bad.
remake.
Everybody was like super, super solid. I think even the dog. The dog was great. Chips.
Chips.
Chips
His
the
name is
dog.
Chips. I also really liked that because that drives home the consumerism like
But
theme.
it also, I
Yeah.
noticed also in Dawn of the Dead, and a lot of times it's almost like when they go to help somebody, that's when they get fucked the most. So maybe
Yeah.
there's a theme of don't help other people because you get fucked. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, that shows your
Well, I
humanity.
mean, it's just it never seems really like a good idea. I mean, don't get me wrong. I want to help people, but at the same time,
Yeah.
and especially if I had like close friends or
I
family, I
I get
wouldn't
it.
want to risk their lives over bringing somebody across the street a sandwich or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
lot
talking
of
about that
survival
guy.
movies, a lot of blah, blah, blah. A lot of survival movies kind of follow that. I mean, no, you don't help
Mhm.
people because they end up screwing you over.
Yeah,
So I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind
hate
of
to
how it
say it, but
goes.
Isn't that happens a lot in The Walking Dead as
mm,
well?
yeah,
Yeah, anytime you help somebody, it ends up coming back to hurt you.
yeah. Don't help anybody unless it's worth it. That's what we're taking away from today.
That's
All
right.
right, Dawn of the Dead. You got anything else, Jen?
That's
Okay,
it.
we're moving on to Day of the Dead, original versus remake.
I
All right.
didn't see the
Okay.
remake.
Well, we'll talk about the original on your end. So I kind of got some comparisons going on here to start it off. Both films involve zombies. Go figure. Both films involve the military.
Surprising.
Both films have a character named Captain Rhodes. Both films have a zombie soldier who remembers how to use a pistol. Both films involve an underground bunker, though it is completely different between the original and the remake. In the original, it was an underground historical archive, a place for storing items and records of historical significance. which the military had taken shelter in to do research on the already existing zombies. In the remake, it was a lab that used to be a missile launch facility where the scientists created a virus that caused the zombie outbreak. In the original series, it was never known why the outbreak occurred or where it originated from. In the original, most of the movie takes place in the underground bunker. In the remake, very little of the movie takes place in the underground bunker. It is also worth noting that in the original, the zombie outbreak was very well established. There are a few survivors left, which is made very clear in the opening scene, which starts out with the main characters flying around in a helicopter looking for more survivors. In the remake, it takes place the first night of the outbreak, where there are still people living their lives unaware of zombies. And the radio announcements in the remake make it very clear the outbreak was limited to that one particular town, whereas the original it seemed national or even global. So that's kind of what I have for that.
Yeah,
Kind of just
for Day of the Dead, correct?
Day of
Just
the
checking.
Dead.
Hmm.
Yes,
Day of
Day
the
of the
Dead.
Dead.
Okay.
So you go from night to dawn to day.
But there's
Yeah.
never an evening.
Was there an afternoon of the
No
dead or
afternoon, no
an
evening.
evening of the dead?
Just nope,
Mid
no.
morning
Mid morning of the dead.
Hmm.
dead.
Maybe
Now, a lot of people that I've talked to
Fun.
about zombie movies and who are big Romero homers kind of say that this is where it started to kind of tilt. Like the first three were classic, and then the rest of them weren't so much. What's your take on
me
that, Jake?
personally, I can see what they're saying. I can definitely notice the difference between the first three and then the last three, but I kind of enjoyed the last three because they were a little bit different. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I do separate it though a little bit in my mind now that you mention it. I really didn't think about it before, but they are kind of different in the kind of the way that they were made and sort of. I can see why people think the originals are classics. Me personally, I like them all, and um, I probably even like some things about the latter three than the originals.
Hmm.
I did not see the remake of Day of the Dead, but I have seen the original. And I mean, I liked the original pretty well. It doesn't have like I mean, it has some gore, but it's really just like zombies pulling bodies apart. Like that was probably the biggest gore parts to it. Was that, and I thought it was kind of funny, actually. I mean, we're talking about like '80s effects, so it's like there's one point where they're like pulling the bodies apart, and the mouth keeps moving, like the head has been pulled off, and the mouth keeps moving, and I was like, oh, I can definitely tell that that's a mechanical type thing.
Hmm.
But it made me chuckle a little bit, honestly. But I did enjoy it. The woman in that one, the main woman, actually, she's really the only woman. There's only one. She reminds me of Linda Hamilton a
Okay.
little bit, or like Ripley
Mm-mm.
from Alien, like kind of like
Hmm.
that vibe. She even kind of dresses like her a little
Okay.
bit. Um, and there's like a lot of sexism there, and a lot of like those guys are acting like they want her, but she's like with that other guy, but that guy is kind of going a little bit insane. And their relationship fizzles out, but like all the guys in it basically like want her, or at least a certain men want her sexually. So there was a lot of like kind of like catcalling, like a lot of like that type stuff going on in the movie, which made me feel a little weird
Mm.
for her, little sympathetic.
That's got to be tough too, because who do you go to?
um,
You know.
yeah, I mean she's the only woman there. But I did think that it was really cool, the way they did like that one zombie that they were trying to train him. Um, did you see this,
That
Jake?
one, it's been a while. Yeah, it's
It's been
been
a
a
while, yeah,
while. I'm remembering a lot of the things you're saying. I'm trying to recall.
yeah. Well, there's a zombie that they're trying to train, and get him to be more a little bit more human, and also that they can kind of like control him so he doesn't like attack people. And the doctor is like giving him things like a book and music. He really enjoys the music. He kind of knows what the book is. Like he is
Yeah.
learning. And I thought that was really cool. And his name is Bub.
Hmm.
And he's pretty cute. He's an endearing character, I think. Um, Very sweet. Tries to save him and gets really sad or acts kind of like he's sad when the doctor dies because he's formed like this bond with the
Oh,
doctor.
that's
So
an ongoing theme that we're going to
yeah,
be getting into is the evolution and like the learning of zombies. So that does continue on
yeah.
through the other movies, which is
And those first three too, they never state what started it all, right? Or what caused the
it
zombification.
really a lot of them really don't say. Um, most I find that
Hmm.
most zombie movies don't really explain it. They just say that there's a virus or an outbreak, and I think a lot of times it happens so fast
Yeah.
nobody has an idea of what it is because it just kind
Hmm.
of it's like a forest fire. It just kind of takes off. Um, yeah, I mean they what one was it there? Uh, yeah, like Diary of the Dead, for example, which we'll get into in a minute. But just to answer the question on that, like Diary of the Dead, they're just watching like the news, and like there's this normal thing that happens. I mean, it's not normal, but for us fucking disgusting human beings, it's kind of normal. This guy like kills his family and kills himself, and then they just wake up and start attacking people. They don't really
Hmm.
say like what's going on there. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I've noticed in a lot of the, well, I will say a lot. I mean, I've watched actually quite a few zombie movies that are more uh, been done more recently, and it seems like a point of contention within those movies. Like they always have to have either people watching the TV scene where the military comes on, or
Hmm.
there's a scene that's dedicated solely to how this started, how the outbreak started, what it is. So I wonder if a lot of people were kind of left wanting, in some of these older movies without truly understanding or knowing the backstory
It's
behind it.
funny because I actually thought about that
Yeah.
not just with zombie movies, but I was just discussing that with somebody the other day. How you see a lot more of the explanation now, like in the remake of Friday the 13th and the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street, even the Rob Zombie's Halloween.
Hmm.
They really go into the backstory a lot more. And I think it's almost like a trend with people that, I don't know, I think it says something maybe about entertainment. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I think it says something to the fact that people are now more interested in the backstories. They're more interested in how did this happen and how did they get there and what did because if you think about it, the original like slashers and stuff in the 80s, zombie movies, all that, they nobody really ever needed to explain anything, or at least they didn't in the movies. Like shit just happened, like
Right.
I want to make an
Yeah.
alien movie, so fucking aliens walk out of the woods. Nobody gives a fuck about how they got there or where they came from, or you know um but nowadays people want to know fucking everything. Do the aliens have children? Do they have any pets? Do they fucking what's their favorite restaurant on their planet? I mean, these days, and I like some details too. So I mean, I can't really argue that, but it's just a trend I noticed in horror movies. Yeah, I don't know if you guys noticed that or
Yeah.
not, but
Yeah, no, I mean,
No,
certainly.
I have.
recently,
I think it's maybe because people just wanted to know why, more of like the psychology, like behind things, and the scientific reasons behind things. I mean, so many people now watch like serial killer
yeah,
documentaries, and like they all want to know why. They all want to know like the backstory and like was he abused and like that kind of
yeah.
thing. Like, I think that might be possibly why the trend
Well,
started.
I
I'm
think
not
back in the
sure.
70s and 80s, times were a lot more
Maybe.
simple too. I mean, without the social media and everything,
Yeah.
people really, I don't know, maybe people just didn't care to know as much as we do today. But
Mm.
Hmm.
maybe it started with Seven. What's in the box? But like, if that was made in the 70s, they would have just been like, "Fuck the box" and gotten a beer or something. I don't know.
Or if there's been 700 zombie movies or any other type of movie over the course of the years, you have to differentiate yourself somehow. And by giving a backstory that's unique to your own movie might be the reasoning behind that
Yeah,
too.
very well could be. We
Right?
thirst for knowledge. Are you guys ready to move on to Land of the Dead? All
Sure.
right.
Do it.
Didn't see
So
it.
Land of the Dead was, in my opinion, pretty good. It had John Leguizamo was the main character. Kind of him and Simon
Oh.
Baker. I don't know if you guys ever saw The Mentalist, but Simon Baker was the guy in The Mentalist.
Mm,
Kind of looks a little bit like Patrick Jane, that guy, but it's not. And Dennis Hopper, of course, we all know Dennis Hopper. He was the main
Mhm.
yep.
antagonist of the movie. So this is post zombie apocalypse. This is like after it's all happened. This is a while later, and it takes place in a city that's blocked off by water and blockades. There's a main building in it where all the rich people have gathered, and they all pay, pretty much Dennis Hopper's character to stay there. It's really ritzy. If you go inside the building, there's a lot of, as you were saying in the previous movies, there's a lot of consumerism. People are drinking
Mm,
champagne, picking out new furs, things like that. I mean, it's really ritzy in there. It's all the high class people, and then out on the rest of the city in the streets, it's very. I mean, the buildings are dilapidated and falling apart, and pretty much everybody just kind of lives on the street or is homeless. It looks a lot like I don't know, like Demolition Man Underground or something like that, where it's very just kind
mm,
of everybody's out there trying to sell things, and there's a lot of like prostitution and shit like that going on. Main building is called Fiddler's Green. The zombies. So in this movie, they go out. John Leguizamo and I almost called him Patrick Jane. Baker. Simon Baker. They run a team where they basically go out and get supplies to bring back to the city. So they're kind of like sort of looting the local towns and stuff like that. And pretty much all that stuff goes back, and it's mostly for the benefit of the rich. Um, Ran
mm,
by Dennis Hopper. So they're in one town, and what they do is they use fireworks to distract the zombies while they do what they need to do. And they're in this one town, and there's big dude worked as like a gas station attendant or whatever, and his name in the credits and stuff is Big Daddy, but he's one of the zombies, and he ends up grabbing a gun off of one of the motorcyclists as they're going away, and then he basically figures out how to use this gun. So it's about the zombies evolving and getting sort of this intelligence and remembering how to pick up and use weapons. They follow the path where the vehicles lead to the city. They eventually end up at the city as well. So that's kind of like your point where everything turns. Um, and then at the same time, John Leguizamo, he is pissed off because Dennis Hopper won't let him live in the big building, which is where he wanted to be. So he steals their pride and joy vehicle that they use to do all the looting and everything, which has missiles on it, and basically blackmails or tries to blackmail Dennis Hopper into giving him his money or he's going to blow up the building. So Dennis Hopper sends Simon
mm,
Baker out to stop him, and um, at that point in time, the zombies pretty much figure out how to get into the city. And how they do that is by jumping into the water and walking on the bottom of the water until they come up on the other side and then into the city.
mm,
So it's interesting because the zombies evolve in this. And one thing that, just if I was going to critique this, and I said I would in the beginning, but doesn't mean I don't still love it, is I don't understand how they could evolve that fast. I mean, it literally seems like this movie takes
mm,
course over like 3 days or something like that. And at the same time, to me, the difficulty that I have is if they were going to evolve, I mean, are their brains and everything not rotting as well as the rest of their bodies? It's almost like counterintuitive that they would start to evolve anyway or become more intelligent. Um,
mm. And they never explain it
they
then?
don't really explain it. It's kind of like they were dead, they became zombies, they ran around for a little while, and then all of a sudden they started being like, "Oh, I remember this shit,"
Mm,
and they start doing things. So it's a little,
yeah.
I don't know, to me it's a little weird, but I also understand that it's probably mostly based on the fact that there was a concept that Romero was trying to, I mean, as you've said, kind of discussing the other movies, he does use a lot of metaphor in his movies and tries to make a point with things. And,
Hmm.
Mhm.
and I'm sure that there's a point with that, and that's why he does that. In that movie, the zombies are called stenches. So, and even at the end, there's a part where Big Daddy kind of starts to show even like a little bit of emotion, which is interesting. Like you said, also with the character at the end of Day of the Dead. So,
Mhm.
I thought it was a pretty good movie. I don't know if it was the best one, but I mean, definitely an interesting watch. Probably something I would, watch every now and then. But
Well, you think about it too. I mean, the Day of the Dead was what, 1985. This was
yeah,
2005, so that's 20
yeah,
years in
Mhm.
between. I mean, you change as an individual, especially somebody who's older to
yeah,
start with. I mean, he's probably said, "All right, I've done this other stuff. Let me try some new things." And same thing like with Diary, which I'm sure we're getting ready to talk about with the more of a found footage
yeah,
style of filming.
yeah. That
So just trying new stuff.
and he is, and I love that about him, and I love that there are
Yeah.
different things. It's just when I start to think about like the biology of it, it seems so absolutely impossible. I guess.
Hmm.
Uh, I have to add, I guess the director, Romero, I guess he's evolving just like the zombies
The
are.
whole thing is so deep. It really is. It's
Yeah.
deeper than.
Oh, he definitely has some
Oh
depth
yeah,
in
he
his
does.
movies.
I'm just kind of
One might say it's like underwater. That's how
it was
deep it
deep.
is.
You couldn't even see the tops of their heads. So, which also, I don't know if they're seeing anyway, but how the fuck would you even be able to see where you're going anyway? That happens in. We're not there yet, so I'll get to that. Has anybody seen Diary of the Dead? Okay,
No.
Steve just knows
I've heard
everything about
it's
it. So,
a stink fest, but
okay,
I heard
Oh,
it was
really? Was it
not
bad?
good.
so this is what I'm
Yes.
going to say about it: is that it's not great because it's found footage. Found footage to me at this point in time got very. It's old. It's tiring. Yeah, it's overused.
Overused?
It's tiring.
Yeah.
It's old.
Hmm.
I see why he did it though. It was really interesting because basically this movie it's a bunch of film students and they're filming a movie in the woods with their overly pretentious professor and he's just getting drunk the whole time and shit and they're filming a horror movie and then all of a sudden the apocalypse or zombie uprising starts and then they're just like well the main guy is kind of like well I'm just gonna document the end of the world and then he gets like obsessed with it. There's a lot of
Mm.
tragedy that happens along the way. A lot of it's like learning how to deal with this new world. One of the girls that they're with, she just kind of can't take it and ends up killing herself. They end up going to the one girl's house, and her parents and brother are zombies. Um,
Mm.
so I think it's a good film if you're not burnt out on the farm footage style movies. But I mean, I think we all have seen quite a few of those, and at this point, we are a little burnt out. One thing that annoyed the shit out of me, and it would probably annoy the hell out of Steve, especially being that we're both gun guys, is they fucking cock the semi-automatic pistol every fucking time they shoot it. Like literally, they shoot
Hmm.
around, fucking cock it, shoot another round, fucking cock it, shoot another. It's fucking obnoxious because if anybody knows how a semi-automatic pistol works,
Mhm.
it ejects its own rounds. You're just sitting there fucking cocking out perfectly good rounds. And that annoyed the
Hmm.
absolute shit out of me. And I'm sure, Steve, if you watched it, you probably would too, because that's just something that, being a gun enthusiast like myself, I really just couldn't tolerate that. But
Yeah, that's a no-fly zone
yeah,
right there. That's terrible.
and this they had like a little. It looked like a little maybe. I didn't get a good look at it. I was trying to, but it looked like maybe a 9 millimeter or something. So it had smaller rounds, but that motherfucker must have had 55 fucking bullets in it too. Not to mention the 35 they ejected every time they cocked the thing. So whatever gun
Hmm.
that was, I want it because the capacity is fucking incredible.
I like it too, not necessarily in this movie, but when there's somebody coming in, and a lot of times it's a police officer or somebody comes in around the corner, and like he just got called to a murder scene, and he comes around the corner, goes into a dark alley, into the building, and then hears something, goes ahead and cocks his gun, and then okay, so he's chambered around like he didn't have one in it to start with, and then they go in a little bit further, and something else happens, and then
Yeah,
again, like that sound kind of like, what are you doing,
yeah.
people? But it's just lazy
He's
writing as
supposed
far
to
as
be a
I'm
law
concerned.
enforcement officer too,
Mm.
whose weapon should be already preloaded, and he should know better than to cock rounds out of it. I think I just said the word cock like 30 times, and I wasn't actually referring to a
Yeah.
cock, which I think I've never done before. So that might be a record. because I don't think I've ever said cock that much without talking about a cock. Anyway, um, once again, I think the professor that was with them, he was like this overly pretentious guy. He got really fucking on my nerves after a while because just everything he fucking said had to be some artistic fucking dialogue. It got kind of annoying. Um, there is this one part, and I encourage anybody that watches it. There's this. They end up running into this Amish guy who's like deaf and can't talk and shit, and that guy is fucking hilarious. He's only in the movie for a couple minutes, but that dude's great. So I'm not going to give away too much on him because if you watch it, it's a nice little like chuckle. But
Like a
yeah, a
comic
little bit.
relief
Like he
kind
kind of
of
made
thing.
me laugh. Like I was like, what the fuck is this guy? It was great. There was a zombie clown randomly, and I noticed in another movie there's a zombie clown. I think there's always like a
Oh
random.
shit.
I want to rewatch all the movies and see if there's always a zombie clown because I want to say that there's always a zombie clown because there's no reason.
I feel like I would have
Yeah, but
noticed that.
it's like it was you had to notice it is the thing. Like you had to be paying attention to notice the zombie
Uh,
clown. But I was like, this is like the third fucking movie I've seen with a zombie clown in it. So I don't know. I think there's something going on there with the
are
clowns.
and these are the newer ones,
Yeah, yeah,
not
that was
not the older ones. I watched a
2005.
lot of the older
Yeah, the
ones.
remakes. Maybe there's
Okay.
something with the remakes. I don't know. Maybe fucking just zombie
Well,
clowns are fucking terrifying.
I
I don't know.
I remember in Dawn of the Dead they did the thing where they were shooting like people that look like different
Yeah, yeah,
actors,
that was good.
but there was no clowns that I know of. There was like a guy that looked like Burt
Oh yeah, Burt
Reynolds.
Reynolds. Which I thought
Yeah, and some
I
other
thought the guy that
people.
looked like Burt Reynolds, if I remember correctly, I think he looked more like Freddie Mercury to me. But anyway,
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I thought the same thing. I was like, he doesn't look that
yeah,
much
he was
like
more of
Burt
a Freddie
Reynolds.
Mercury. But whatever.
That's quite
Yeah,
a jump from one to the other.
true.
All right, so that's basically my notes for that movie. Of course, it ends in tragedy like they mostly do, and there is kind of this
Mhm.
it's kind of a cool scene at the end that's kind of ironic because there was a scene at the beginning where the guy who was filming everything he was trying to do particular things in the scene of his horror movie, and it actually ended up kind of playing out in real life at the end of the movie. So that's kind of cool too. So look out for that. And that's all I got. And if you guys don't have anything, then I'll move on to Survival of the Dead, which is the last installment. All right.
Okay,
Okay.
do it.
Survival of the Dead. Steve, you know when that was made?
I don't.
2009.
2009. Now, when did Romero pass away?
It was, oh, fuck, I just had that and I don't have it right now.
Okay, I can look it up
God damn it.
while you're
Anyway,
Oh,
talking.
I was gonna look it up. Okay, go ahead.
all right. So
Okay,
Survival of the Dead,
I'll do it.
2009. This movie is directly connected to Diary of the Dead. So I didn't mention this before, but it's important. In Diary of the
What?
Dead, they were cruising along in their Winnebago or whatever, and they end up coming across some National Guardsmen. And the National Guardsmen, they're like, "Woo, they're going to save us!" And the National Guard guys, they end up basically robbing their supplies that they had. Those same National Guardsmen are what Survival of the Dead is essentially about after they left them. So this is happening at the same time as Diary of the Dead. Um, so it's the National Guard. They rob the college kids. The soldiers make their way to an island where most of the story takes place. They end up getting kind of drawn in by this old guy. So there's this island, a remote island, and there's these two families on it that have been feuding for years. And
Yeah, I heard about
and
that.
one of the guys was kicked off, like exiled from the island. One of the old guys, one of the families, and he has a video out there that draws the National Guardsmen in. So they end up going to the meeting place, and then there's a shootout, and the head of the family of the rival family, he ends up by himself because all of his people end up dead, and they all end up jumping on a ferry to go back to the island. They end up kind of making friends with each other after this giant shootout because I don't know. I guess in the apocalypse, fuck it, what does it matter? Um, so
Let me say this real quick, Jake. So, or it's actually a question. So the feud was based upon one of the families wanting to eradicate all
yes,
zombies, and then the other family keeping their family who are zombies
yes,
alive,
yes.
right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So the one who is trying to eradicate the zombies, he's the one that ends up with the National Guardsmen because he's
Okay.
now on land, and then he talks them into going back and basically helping him take out the other rival family. So, with that being said, The guy that's trying to keep the dead alive, if you will, he ends up chaining them to things while he's trying to figure the whole thing out. And so there's like a mailman chained to a post, and he just goes over and puts the mail in the box and then pulls it back out and then walks 20 feet and then goes back and like puts it in the mailbox and pulls it out and then walks. So it's like he's just going in this circle. So it does show intelligence, but
Mhm.
the main character of the ones that are he's trying to get the zombies to be a part of life again. The one I was just talking about, he is has a thing for the other guy's daughter, and she turns into a zombie.
Mm.
He's trying to. This is really confusing, and I'm sorry if I'm being confusing. I'm trying to explain this the best way I can. Um, so he is trying to find a way to keep them alive or bring them back. Basically, he wants to be with the other guy's daughter, which is kind of gross because the daughter is like, I don't know, 20 something, dude's like 60. I don't know. He's kind of nasty.
Eek.
But
Yeah.
she was obsessed with horses. In the beginning of the movie, she's riding around on the island on a horse as a zombie. And then he basically tries to get her to eat
Mm.
the horse because he wants to prove that zombies can eat something besides humans, which would prove his case that
Mm.
if they can get zombies to eat something else, then zombies will be okay to be around, I guess, is what his theory is.
Oh.
So we never get to find out. Well, we find out, but they never get to find out what the truth is because they have a big shootout and pretty much everybody dies again. Not everybody, but I'm not going to tell you who doesn't die. So there's a scene where they come across a group of rednecks sitting around a fire. This is while they're on their way to the island, and one of the men is bragging about how he like fucked a zombie woman. I thought that was kind of gross, and I want to share it because it reminded me of
Yeah.
Contracted, and I was like, that is fucking disgusting. Yeah,
Oh.
I was like, just
There could be maggots in
I don't
there.
know, man.
Mm,
Steve.
thank you
Yeah, I
for
don't
that.
know. I mean,
Yeah.
that's fucking gross, dude. Anyway, I got so much I could say, but I feel like I don't know. I feel like I just shouldn't. But I wanted to at least
I'm
mention
glad.
Oh.
that.
Yeah.
So there's a few things that kind of annoyed me a little bit about Diary of the Dead and Survival of the Dead, and that's that the roads were really clear. Like they were driving around on the roads and they weren't running into all kinds of
Hmm.
shit in the road, which I think there'd be shit in the road, like on
Yeah.
every road.
Very unusual.
There'd be like accidents and
Yeah.
dead bodies and all kinds of shit. But the roads were pretty clear, and that was kind of one of the things that I was a little annoyed about. So I wasn't really annoyed about it. I was just kind of like, huh. One of the scenes, a soldier,
You think it was a
I don't
budget
know if it
thing?
was a budget thing.
You think it might have
Maybe
been a
Romero
budget
was
thing?
just like, hey, I want to make this movie without fucking around with that stuff. Like, y'all know app and fuck it. We're just going to get there. I don't know.
Right.
Um, one of the scenes,
So just as a side note, and I'm interrupting you as opposed to
okay.
Jen. You're welcome, Jen. So Romero did pass away in July of 2017. So this movie was written in '09, you
Yeah,
said?
I was wrong.
Okay. Or
I
came
was
out in
wrong.
'09?
I thought it was more recent than that. I thought it was 18 or 19, but
It said
damn.
2017. And I heard that uh, on one of my long trips, wherever I was driving to, and listening to his kind of backstory, I think that he had another one in the works prior to passing
Mm.
away, and that his wife obviously has the rights to it, but they've been
Mm.
struggling for several years trying to figure out how to make it all work. So I don't think it's come out, but
Mm.
or it may not ever come out. But there's another one that's almost completely written that he did before he passed away that they just
I think they should
haven't moved
totally
on
honor
with. So
him and do it and
Oh.
have somebody direct it that he
Yeah.
respected, and that'd be amazing. I
Mm.
was going to add one, and I was seeing one soldier bites a zombie's finger off because he's trying to grab him and he bites his finger off, and then he ends up becoming infected slowly. And that was interesting to me because it's usually the zombie that bites the person, but I guess realistically, if there's any kind of introduction of the virus or whatever to you, but then again, that's the part that
Mm.
kind of like I don't know, it gets a little confusing because they're supposed to be like undead. They don't really necessarily talk about a virus. It's like undead. But then if you bite a finger off a
Yeah.
zombie and because you might have swallowed some of the blood or something, you become a zombie, but why? Because realistically, you didn't die from that. So you became infected. So maybe all zombies are
Mm.
infected. I don't know. That part was a little curious to me. Because realistically, it's always when somebody dies. In Romero movies, it's typically when somebody dies, they come back as a zombie. Whereas like 28 days
Yeah.
later,
Hmm.
for example, which I was going to get into with the comparison, this 28 days later, you can get a drop. The one guy gets a drop of blood in his eye and he gets infected. So it's really an introduction of any kind of
Hmm.
viral DNA that is
Hmm.
transmitted. So it's kind of that part was kind of interesting to me because I sort of felt like they never really explained that rule before, if you will. So I was kind of
Yeah.
like, well, that's weird.
I've watched a few zombie movies where they've stated that it's the saliva, not the bite, but the saliva.
Oh,
So
yeah.
any sort of fluid, whether it's a sneeze, I've seen one recently where there were people wearing masks. It was an
Hmm.
Asian
Was that Train
movie,
to Busan?
but they were
Mm.
well, that's one of them that I've watched actually a few times, and I feel that's one of the better zombie movies ever
That's
made.
probably going to be coming up in part
But
two because, damn.
yeah, I've I've got a lot of
Yeah,
part
there's.
two, not so much part
Well, I
one. I
wanted
think.
to. I understand, and I wanted to really open this one up with Romero, being that he's the fucking Mac
Yeah.
Daddy zombie master. So, um, that's really the only reason I started off with Romero and going through the films. I mean, obviously, we're going to need a part two because we're almost at an hour already. Can't even believe it. And but I didn't
Yeah.
understand. That's the thing is I didn't understand that it was. You get what I'm saying though? Like it's a virus because if a zombie sneezes in your face and you turn into a zombie, then
Mhm.
obviously that's not an undead situation. That's a viral situation. Am I wrong?
Right.
So I don't know. It's kind of weird. I feel like they switched up the rules a little bit there. But 28 days later, for example, had that rule established from the beginning. One of the zombies in Survival of the Dead actually turned a car on and put it in gear and went back and forth. So it also had that theme of evolution there. Um, and the end scene was really ironic and funny. So I'm not going to tell you what that was, but you should check that out because I got a little giggle out of that as well. And that, my friends,
Oh.
is kind of my quick, and I could go on about this shit forever, is my quick overview.
Mhm.
I tried to keep very brief, and it took an hour, but it's my quick overview of Romero. So,
There you
we
go.
haven't talked we haven't talked about the
All
the
crazies.
crazies.
all things Romero. That's right.
So
Yeah.
the crazies, I put that in the same category as 28 Days Later and I Am Legend, more of a viral type zombie
Mhm. Yeah.
situation. And if I remember correctly, is the big. I haven't seen the original in so long. Is the original on par with the new one where it's chemicals got dumped in the river? Is that what it was?
Yes, it is the water
Water.
supply.
Okay.
Um, yeah. I have not seen the
Whoa.
remake, but I
Whoa.
have seen the original.
You
Oh
need to see the
wow. Yeah,
remake.
that's a must
The
see.
remake's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Um, I've heard, and I know that what's his name? Timothy
Oliphant.
Oliphant. Oliphant?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Oliphant.
in
Yeah.
it, and I
Yeah,
like him. I like him. I've seen him in things. Always liked him in things.
Yeah.
So
he's good.
I'll have to check that one
I
out.
have it if you want to borrow it.
Sure.
So anyway,
Yeah. No, I do like that
Basically,
one.
Jake is like Blockbuster.
yeah,
That's right. Yeah, he's got enough movies.
I just
I
had more
know.
come in today.
Nice.
Yeah, why don't you talk about the crazies? We'll go there, and if we don't have enough time, then we can get more into the virus zombies later. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've seen the remake, so we can go ahead and compare
Yeah.
and contrast if you'd like.
Okay. So it's about a highly contagious virus that the government is trying to isolate. People are wearing gas masks. Mostly it's the military that's wearing the gas masks. And they're getting like antibiotic shots. But there is no cure. And they know very little about it except that there are two outcomes. You can either die in like 2 days, like straight up just die, or you go crazy, which is why
Go
it's called the
crazy.
crazies. Yeah. Um, it is outdated in some ways, but I think in concept and storytelling, it's well done. It's good at showing paranoia and has a tense atmosphere. I loved the way that he showed the people going crazy when the military like invades like the homes. There's like a bunch of scenes where they just show like different people from the homes. Like one of them is like a little boy and he's like shooting them with like a toy gun. There's a girl that keeps like practicing for her piano recital, so she's playing the piano this whole time that the military has like come and
That's
invaded,
fucking
and
ominous.
that was like kind of weird. Yeah. And there's like this old grandma type lady, and she's knitting, and the military guy, he's supposed to come in there, you know, and like either kill them or get them out or whatever. And he kind of like puts down his guard, you know, like lets down his guard with that one grandma lady, because she's just sitting there knitting, you know, and he's like, oh, you know, she's just a harmless grandmother or whatever, just knitting something. And then all of a sudden she like comes up to him and just stabs him with the knitting needle. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. There were definitely some moments in this movie where I was like, that's really well, like really well done. Um, and oh, another thing I liked was that you couldn't really like tell for sure like who the infected were. Like occasionally somebody would like kind of laugh like a crazy little
Mm.
laugh, or do something like kind of maybe out of character, or maybe like there was a few people that like let out like a lot of aggression. Some of them were like very cool and collected, and then other ones were just like lashing out with aggression. But I thought that was like really cool and well done. And there's that creepy scene with the one guy and his daughter. I don't want to go into too many details about that scene, but that was pretty
Mm.
creepy. Some incest going on there.
Ugh.
Uh, and yeah, definitely reminds me of like the 2020 pandemic in some
Oh shit.
ways. Yeah, I like a
Now,
little bit, like not full on,
one of the
but
more
just the
iconic
panic.
scenes in the remake of The Crazies is in all these movies, whether it be a zombie movie or not, there's so many different ways to kill somebody. You get axes,
Mhm.
guns, chainsaws, but the fork,
Pitchfork.
pitchfork,
Yeah.
uh, I mean, that just brings that whole scene, dragging the pitchfork along, just kind of gets get your blood boiling. I mean, I mean, it's just a super cool scene. Is there a kill scene in the original movie with the pitchfork, or was that unique to the remake?
There was no pitchfork scene
I'm
in the
Gotcha.
I'm gonna
So
original.
be honest, Steve. Talking to
go
her
ahead,
talk
Jake.
about, or listening to her talk about the original, I don't recall a lot of that in the remake. It sounds almost completely like a
No,
completely different
see,
movie. To me, I need to watch the remake again. I wish I had, and maybe in
yeah,
part two of this I will have, and I can be like, oh yeah, the fucking grandma, and that'd be cool.
yeah. I don't remember
Yeah,
it either, but it's been a few
there
years since I've seen the remake.
there's definitely some pretty cool moments. And I think it's very
Yeah,
tragic. Because that one lady is pregnant. She just got pregnant. And it's really sad what happens at the end.
it is, and the ending is probably different. I need to
So,
watch that because you just made me really want to watch that.
oh, there's like one other thing that I wanted to mention. The doctor guy is like super like over the top. It was almost a little bit like comic relief amidst all this tragedy. Just because he's like so passionate and like so angry. And I really like the fact that for him especially, I was like, okay, has he gone crazy? Like, is he part of the crazies, the crazy zombie? Or is he just like so upset about the military not letting him do his fucking job?
Hmm.
I think it was more that, because they never really like show him do anything too zombie like, but I like the fact that they kept it like kind of almost ambiguous. Like you're left like questioning, wait, is he a zombie? Like at first,
Yeah.
you know, you're thinking, oh, is he one? Because he's just so angry.
See, I think the newer one,
But
I think the
yeah.
remake is more on par with like probably 28 Days Later. I keep bringing that one up, where it's I think there's
Mm.
more physical attributes to them being infected. So,
Ah,
like the new one, they don't look necessarily like zombies, but they definitely look fucked up.
oh, the original, they do not look
Yeah,
fucked up. They
Well,
look like
it starts off
everybody else.
with like brain fog too. Like they're just kind of like staring into the sun. They're not
yeah.
there. Almost
Mhm.
like they're sleepwalking or something. And
Okay.
that's
There's
kind of how it all
a little of
starts.
that in the original. Yeah.
Hmm.
But you cannot tell them from regular people, like, at all. The only way that we as the viewer can tell is, like, most of, the military people are in these white suits and, gas masks. And that's how
That's interesting.
that they're not a zombie.
Hmm.
That's interesting. Like you say, Jake. So does that mean that they still have, because you can't tell, they must still have some humanity left to them.
Oh,
They
they
know
do.
what they're doing. They have uh, decision making skills
Yeah.
and yeah. And I've always, because there's really two different types of zombies as far as I'm concerned. The ones that are brain dead, can't open a door and walk slowly,
Mhm.
move around very methodically, and then you've got the zombies that can run after you, that can, you know, take a corner and cut across a field to get to you, as opposed to follow the path you took.
Yeah.
The more thinking zombie, and you don't see those as often as you just see kind of the brainless ones that
Mhm.
are for the most part in most of all of the Romero style movies. So
So I
Yeah.
personally, and
Like
sorry,
Um,
a lot of the
oh, go ahead.
no, you,
Um, I was just gonna say that I think that in a lot of these zombie movies, including the crazies, I know that they like represent death in a way, but they also represent like the id, like a psychology kind of thing, like the id and versus the ego.
mhm,
Yeah. So the id is like a very primitive drive to fulfill one's basic needs, whether that be like sex or hunger. And I think in the crazies, they really show that too because, well, there was that one scene that I was talking about with like the dad, and he like
yeah,
does some things with his daughter that he shouldn't, and I think that if he was in his right mind, he probably wouldn't have done that, but like maybe he had those thoughts, even beforehand. And like once he became a crazy, he went with that id, primitive brain kind of thing and did it.
yeah. And it's interesting because when I was looking up zombie themed movies, there was even what was it, Slither that we watched for like
Oh, I remember that
yeah,
one a
that was
little.
even
Yeah.
considered a zombie movie with the meat
Yeah.
attacking everybody. Remember?
Mhm.
It's like a New York strip
Meat.
crawling inside somebody's personal space,
Yeah.
if you will. Um,
Kind of reminded me of a slug.
yeah, well, no, it was definitely like a prime rib with barbecue sauce on it or something. Um, so I'm gonna get into this in the other one, but just kind of say what I found is that I was really looking for like all the types of zombies, and Walking Dead has a few. They have roamers, lurkers, variant zombies, burners. There's also like biological, supernatural, chemical, technological, constructed, and magic. Those were the other classifications of zombies. And what I think that I
Mhm.
found is that I always thought the infected was different than zombies, but I think it goes everybody's under the zombie umbrella. Like, not all zombies are infected, but all infected are zombies, if you will, that kind of scenario.
Mhm.
Because, I don't know. Whenever we get on a topic like this, I always try to define what we're talking about. And I'm like, okay, what is the difference between the infected and the regular zombies? I know that Walking Dead, they did an interview with the creator of Walking Dead, and he even openly said that he got his inspiration from Romero. So that's
I can
why
see that
Walking
for
Dead is
sure.
very. Um, my problem with Walking Dead is I think everybody stopped watching it at a certain point. I don't know why it's
I
still
did.
going.
Yeah.
I can tell you the exact point where I
Me
stopped
too.
watching
What
it.
was yours?
Um, don't look at the flowers.
Yeah,
Do you remember that?
little
It was
girl.
like a big thing at the time. And for some reason, I just remember like that at that point, I was just like, I don't know why specifically, but it was just like not as interesting to me around that
Hmm.
time period. I was like, don't look at the flowers. And then I just stopped watching it like right after that.
For me,
Also it was hard for me to watch it because I didn't have any way to watch it. I had to go to a friend's house to watch it.
see. I
And
watched
like
it
I had
fucking religiously, and my very exact
yeah.
moment when I said "fuck Walking Dead" was when they let Negan live. Rick had Negan finally. He was like up against the tree, whatever,
Oh,
and then they decided
Negan.
to let him live because
Yeah.
that was the more humane thing to do, or whatever the fuck. And it's like I,
Yeah, because he's
I
such a
was
good
like,
guy.
but,
He had to let him
but it's
live.
like you fucking have killed so many fucking people over practically nothing. Like you've looted fucking stores and shot people over Snickers bars and shit. But like this motherfucker killed
Mm,
Glenn, put you through all this fucking hell, and this is where you decide to show a sign of forgiveness. I mean, I don't know. I just thought that that was really fucking
Right.
lame.
it's pretty dumb.
Like out of all of the people you could possibly let live and give another chance to, like you chose that guy. And I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Negan was like a fan favorite and all that shit, but it's like it just didn't
Mhm.
fucking. It wasn't very practical.
That's probably why.
And I
Yeah.
Right.
think they should have just
That movie or that TV series, I should say, is like a lot of similar TV series to me, where I hear about it, I don't watch it. I hear about it, I don't watch it. I'm like, you really got to watch this. I don't watch it, and then like a Saturday and Sunday, I watch like fucking 20 episodes, and that's
Yeah.
how it kicks off. I mean, maybe not that many, but I go on like a binge, and I'm like, and I get hung up in
Yeah.
it. It's the same with Game of Thrones, same with Dexter, same with all these other types of movies that you know, or
I
TV.
bet you
I
watched
keep saying
I
TV
bet you
shows.
watched all of Hannibal though, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I loved
I
Hannibal.
knew it.
Yeah, that TV show was fantastic, and I'm a Mad Mikkelsen's fan for sure. But
Yeah.
and everybody else, Fishburne did great. I mean, and obviously, what's her face there from X Files?
Gillian Anderson.
I can't think of her name.
Oh,
Is Gillian Anderson?
Gillian Anderson?
Gillian Anderson. Yeah,
Yeah.
another one of my
Gillian
I used to have a
Anderson,
favorites.
yeah.
huge crush on
I
her when she was
feel
in
like
X
she
Files.
gets better with age. Every time I see her in something, she's
Yeah.
like more appealing in the role that
She's
she's
an
playing.
absolutely beautiful woman
Um,
too.
Mhm.
she is. She
She
definitely
was
is.
she was
Uh,
also in, American Gods. I don't know if you've seen
Never heard
that.
of it.
Yeah.
no, never seen it, but
She's
yeah, I
she's in
mean,
that too.
it goes back
Mhm.
to the whole how do you get infected? I mean, The Walking Dead was bite, right? You got to get bitten. Other movies show where you have to. I mean, because how many times have they killed somebody and just been covered in complete blood, or even the scenes where they covered themselves in
Yeah.
zombie guts, thinking that they can maneuver
Oh,
through?
yeah.
You'd figure that would be the one thing that would definitely
How did
get
you
you
not get a little bit of that in your mouth? You
in
know.
trouble.
You know
Yeah.
the thing.
Right?
But I guess the whole idea was that everybody had the disease to start with, and it wouldn't kick in until you died, right? So everybody, just like the baby was born with having this disease already, and
Yeah.
Mhm.
but I mean, there's 101 different ways to go about it, and unfortunately, we can't talk about all the movies. And I'm sure at some point in time we'll get into some more. Bring up your guy that you were talking about. Uh, zombie survival guide. I don't
Yeah.
know if we have a few moments to discuss him, or we want to sit
I
on
think
that
we're going to
for a
sit
while.
on that. We're going to go. I think I'm going to go ahead and say that we're going to save World War Z and probably get more into the zombie infected scenario. I think we're going to have a part two probably pretty soon because there's just a lot of material on this one.
A lot.
The
Yeah.
last thing I wanted to say, just because we're on Walking Dead and I just don't want to say it randomly in the next one, is that the thing that annoys me the most about Walking Dead is like how fucking long do zombies last? Like they're in Georgia fucking heat. I'm in North Carolina, and in the summertime, like I'm fucking
Right?
drenched. Like, yeah,
So
like
humid.
how is that body not completely fucking just fall like meat falling off the bone, like 3 days into the
Right.
Yeah.
summer? Like that's one part I don't understand is and I get it. It's for entertainment value. They got to keep the zombies. That's the whole point of the show. I understand that, but it's like practically and realistically these zombies would, I mean, they'd have what, like a shelf life of like a fucking month, maybe tops. And even then they'd be on the ground like a fucking swivel
Yeah.
head. I mean, I don't know. That part is always hard for me to get across because I'm just like, how are some of these zombies so fresh looking? You know, like, and there's hordes of them too, like
Yeah.
fucking hordes of them. Like, was there a secret town, like a
Right.
whole secret fucking town that like didn't get affected, and then it did? I mean, and then they walked
Hmm.
fucking 900 miles up the road to fucking where they were in
When's the
Georgia.
What's the last zombie movie you saw a zombie kneel down to a stream and drink water too? I mean, that's kind of
Yeah, yeah.
important, right?
Well, that's
Hydration.
just it. You're talking about
So,
muscle atrophy. You're talking about like, and then they basically like have them moving, and there's bones, and it's like, how the fuck are the bones moving? You need
Hmm.
to have fucking,
right.
Yeah.
muscles and tendons and all that other shit. It just, I don't know.
True.
Anyway, that's why I was saying I love zombie movies. I'm not trying to
And
be a dick, but it's like when you look at it from the logical or biological standpoint, it's just like, what the fuck?
yeah, and like, how come nobody ever talks about like how bad they smell? Because I'm sure if they're decomposing in like heat and whatnot, that they would talk about how they smell
I don't know.
more.
Maybe it's like getting used to your litter box in your house or something. Like they've been there for
Yeah.
so fucking long now. But
I was always surprised how they always were surprised by a zombie being closer than it actually
yeah,
was. Like some dude that's just got walking around on one leg, sneaking up behind somebody. You know, you didn't hear
Mhm.
that, you didn't see that. I mean, he's not moving quickly, but it was always every episode somebody was getting bitten. Usually it was some side character or something from a zombie
Yeah.
that everybody would have heard moaning and groaning, going through
oh
the
man,
woods
you
at
should
him
hear
or
me when I
whatever.
wake up in the
So,
morning. My fucking back. I mean, shit. I can't imagine being a zombie and my muscles fucking decomposing. I mean, I don't know. Anyway,
we want to hit up a quick
we're gonna do a
recommendation.
recommendation, and it sucks. I almost don't want to leave this because there's so much, but we will be back on this very soon. And we also have a really special episode coming up, and I'm going to talk about that in the next one probably. So stay tuned for that, listeners. And now we'll go with the recommendations, if you would like, Steve.
Okay. Um, let's see. I've been wanting to talk about this movie that I've hinted at a little bit,
You'll,
and I
I
think
know
I
you, and you're
will.
like dying for
So
it.
I know, man. So I gutted my way through this movie, not because it was bad, but because it was sickening. The movie is called The Sadness. It came out during our pandemic, so that there's a lot of ties to a realistic factor of how this movie starts. And the long story short version is that there is a couple that the young man drives his girl to work that day, and I think he's off for some reason. And during that time, uh, all hell kind of breaks out, and they start to notice some strange things out of the gate. The zombies in this movie have complete and 100% control of their mind and their physical
Hmm.
attributes. But the virus actually acts or causes them to act on their, like Jen said, their primal instincts, and their almost their darkest and most dirty desires. And so there is a lot of nasty sexual stuff in this movie.
Hmm.
Um, but not only can they open doors and do different things, they're pretty much more human than human, like Jake had said in a couple episodes back. They have all their human attributes, but they're able to do so much more and have the stamina to be able to do that. So they can run, they can still talk. There's a lot of dialogue throughout the movie, although it's all uh, in subtitles in English. So I can't remember. I think it's a Korean movie, but there's no English to be heard.
Hmm.
So you're doing a lot of visual watching, but and not listening to what they're saying. But God, there's a lot that goes on, and there's some grotesque kills and some group uh, killing. That's, I mean, it's gross. It's a gross movie. I'll
Well,
just put
Jen
it that
wants
way.
to know though, is it
But
gooey?
Yeah, is
it's
it
Gooey
definitely
gooey?
and
gooey.
moist? Okay.
Yeah, it is. It is gooey. It is what muckle what?
Oh, Meg Mugglebones.
Mucklebones,
She'd be
very
proud.
mucklebony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
No one will get
The
that
sadness.
unless they
Yep.
saw the other
That's why you
episode.
got to be a regular
Bad stuff.
viewer, folks, or listener.
Yeah.
Jen, what are you recommending?
I have two recommendations. I will not talk too long about either one of them because I know we're, coming down to the last few minutes.
Yes.
But one is a little more serious. That is Serpent and the
Okay.
Rainbow. It has Bill Pullman in
I
it.
love some Pullman.
Um, love him, the nicest guy possible. And no exception here in this movie. He is a nice guy. Um, it's more of a Haitian, like voodoo type zombie.
Okay.
So there's that. But I always really enjoyed that movie. I saw it a long, long time ago, and then I rewatched it this week.
Awesome.
Uh, yeah. And most of it still holds up too. That one was directed by Wes Craven.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's actually a lot of like dream stuff in it too. And there are some similarities to Nightmare on Elm Street as well. Like I saw a few things towards the end that reminded me of Nightmare on Elm Street.
I
So I
actually
thought
think
that was like, oh yeah, that's definitely a Wes
I
Craven
was gonna
movie.
say I think I have that one in like one of those Wes Craven packs. Yeah.
Box set thing, yeah. But yeah, I think that one's a really good one. And also one of my all-time favorite movies is Dead Alive, also known as Brain Dead. It has two different names just to make it ultra
Hmm.
confusing. That one is directed by Peter Jackson, and we all know who Peter Jackson is.
Peter Jackson.
It's pretty famous.
Oh yeah.
Um, and this particular zombie movie is very campy, as I like sometimes. I like my serious and I like my
As long
campy.
as it's gooey,
It
Jen
depends
is
on
down.
what mood I'm in. Oh, this movie is for sure gooey, and it is
Hmm.
disgusting. Um, I think it was done. I think it was the 80s, or no, it was early 90s. Dead Alive was early 90s. And it's just so silly and so disgusting, and it brings
Look at how
joy to my
happy
heart
she
because
gets
I have always
about this shit.
I am I'm like so happy. You gotta take into account that I am the type of girl that when I was a little girl, I was like Garbage Pail Kid cards. Heck yeah! Like I wanted to collect all of them. I just liked the gooeyest, goriest, like nastiest stuff. Just it
A
brings
few
me a
weeks back,
thrill.
I actually got the Garbage Pail Kids movie.
Okay, that movie was
It was
terrible. I
gooey.
will say this. It was terrible. Yeah,
There was
it
gooey
was pretty bad
parts.
though.
Pail Kids are all.
If I say it's bad, then it's
Yeah,
pretty
well,
bad.
there's an audience for everything out there.
Oh, there's nostalgia.
So
There's that.
I
It's a
my
factor.
recommendation. I do have a movie, but I also kind of wanted to go a little off the rails here and say that my recommendation is a book, which is Zombie Survival Guide by Max Brooks. And we're going to get into him definitely more in the next episode. And the reason I wanted to recommend that is because I actually bought a new copy of that because my old copy I went missing, but bought a new copy of it recently because I wanted to look at it again. But that book was a huge part of kind of my growing love for zombies and kind of discussing with my guy friends what we would do in a zombie apocalypse. And it's just a fun read,
Mhm.
and it's interesting to me and kind of had a lot to do with my thoughts on zombies and things as well. Very good book, The Zombie Survival Guide by Max Brooks, and I will recommend a movie, and it's not my favorite zombie movie, but just on the Max Brooks train here, World War Z. If you haven't seen it, we'll discuss that a little bit more in the next zombie episode. But that was also written by Max Brooks, and I wanted to mention that as well because the guy, did a lot for zombies. At least for me, I think of him as a very big part of zombies, and other people may or may not. He has written several other zombie-related things, but he was a big part of my growing into zombies. So I probably just have a super fondness for him in my heart. And that's my recommendation. I'm sure World War Z is very different than the book. If you're more of a book person, read the book. If you want to cheat, just watch the movie and hope it's close enough for you, when you talk about it, you don't look like an idiot. Um, so if we're all set here and saving everything for the next one, I've got my quote. You guys are ready to end it.
I have a
Let's hear it.
quote too.
What the fuck is
Let's see
this?
if yours
What
is
the
the same
fuck
as
is this?
mine.
Now you're jumping in with quotes. The quotes is my thing.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
it better be the same one as
I
mine,
think
or I'll
mine's
be
gonna be
mad.
better than yours. I don't know, but
Oh,
then
okay,
again, you and I
maybe.
think about the same shit sometimes. It's a little weird, but
Well, now I'm going to say a quote too, so
now
go
fuck
ahead.
you guys. I'm gonna say my quote
Okay.
and cut it off because we're past the time, and the quote is my thing. All right.
Okay.
Well, why don't you guys go first? Because I'm ending with my quote.
All right. Shoot him in the
Okay,
head.
that's not mine.
Shoot him in the head. My quote
Yeah.
is engage brain before putting mouth in gear.
Okay, those are very good quotes, but
Nice.
mine is better. And mine is when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
Oh, that is a good
Heard
one.
that
Fuck
one.
off.
Yeah.